world. This video is going to be a quick and brief discussion about my analysis of the Black Lives Matter movement and its treatment and reactions to it in mainstream media as well as new media, especially in social media, namely the websites Twitter and Facebook, as well as Instagram. I have to preface this by saying that this is an issue that hits close to home for me because I consider myself a black person in America. These tragedies and injustices that have happened throughout my lifetime, actually, not just in the past few years, have affected my worldview as well as how I treat others. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer. There is a little bit of bias here. Also, I want to preface my analysis by saying the dynamic between mainstream media as well as media given by everyday citizens is nothing new. It's something that has been seen over and over again throughout the history of just struggle for justice. So if you're going to look back in American history, you can look at the treatment of the Till family, where Emmett Till was blamed for his own murder. You can draw a comparison directly to Michael Brown. Even more recently, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Rekia Boyd, Natasha McKenna. Any of these people, the list of names goes on and on, which creates the climate and the necessary anger and energy that led to the creation of the slogan Black Lives Matter, because throughout American history there has been a default understanding that black lives are not as valuable, or not essential to the American experience. That is something very important to remember, is that even though black lives are essential and were essential to the building of this very country that we call the United States of America, they were still deemed less than. So this has been a call to action for many people who take for granted the presence of black people within society. First, one of the main points I wanted to go over is the infighting within the movement. So you have the phenomenon of respectability politics that has been around since forever. You can talk about right after the Civil War, Reconstruction. After the 1880s, you had activists like Ida B. Wells, who stood up to the wanton lynchings of black men, women, and children for not knowing their place within the American hierarchy that was in place at the time, at the turn of the century. As long as you appeared to be chaste and of good demeanor, you probably weren't going to get lynched. You can fast forward a century ahead, more than a century ahead. You have people that are actually talking about a 12-year-old who plays with a toy gun named Tamir Rice, who deserved to die because he did not comply with the police officers' lawful demands. Although everything was caught on video, we now see that there was probably not enough time to comply with the officers' demands. So going over respectability politics, we see a dynamic of symbolic interaction amongst activists who want the same thing as younger activists, but want to go about it a different way, because they still have ingrained in their minds that the imagery conjured up from the civil rights movement of the 60s is still going to apply to today's discourse, which has proven to be not the case. Um, we we can also look at it from a conflict theorist perspective. Most people who like to derail the slogan Black Lives Matter with countering slogans like All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter or even Muslim Lives Matter or Asian Lives Matter tend to have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, whereas people that are mainly disaffected by these policies of heavy policing and structural violence within black and brown communities, they want to keep those things the same way, which is very unfortunate because most people might not realize it, but America represents the ideal that humanity, as it stands now, doesn't have to play a zero-sum game. If I gain, doesn't necessarily mean that you lose. So from a conflict theory perspective, we can look at the reaction of mainstream media to reframe the discussion of Black Lives Matter into a discussion about all life being sanctified, which is all automatically assumed. We can go to the next point that I wanted to make is mainly that now that we have the power of social media, how can people who feel disaffected by the hierarchy that stands now, how can they actually affect change? There are several ways to do this. The conundrum comes where you have people that are using the very platforms to liberate themselves or others or to awaken others. They're being oppressed by those same things. So you have many media figures, prominent social activists online that are being targeted on Twitter or on Facebook. So the question remains, can we actually use the tools that are put in place by white supremacist structures to actually help people that are oppressed by white supremacist structures? It's a question that I'm still grappling with myself in personal life, and it's something that hopefully my analysis can spur more people that are outside of the Black Lives Matter umbrella to explore a little bit more. So I want to thank you for taking up this time to listen to me babble, and I'm going to keep fighting and trying to search for some justice. Thank you.